Well, lots happened and I haven't been videoing much of it at all. I'm just partway through the next turn, but Beneventum's going on. The Romans, well, first of all, they managed to do a lot of damage to that heavy cav. Anytime that I have cav involved in a fight, it turns into this swirling thing. There's no way to keep your flanks from being exposed. Now, cav can run away, but not when it's pinned, and there was pinned cav that was, you know, sent running. On the other hand, also here, the Romans have swept forward and done a lot of damage. No permanent losses except my pipe. No, there's nothing that's failed a rally check. They haven't really had a chance. They're waiting for Pyrrhus for that. Basically, the Greeks moved forward here under his initial command, and there isn't a lot. There was an attack on this side and then sweeping back by a number of Roman commanders. So it does not look good to me still from the Greek side. That whole flank looks like it's collapsing. The only thing going for it is there's a bunch of elephants there, and maybe they can fix things, but maybe they'll be fed a nice pork chop or two. Well, that's the end of the turn. No big thrusts. Mainly, both sides were actually rallying their forces for the most part. And now you see Pyrrhus has a line built up there to help defend. He did a little bit of fighting down here, but probably the biggest thing was an elephant came crashing through and drove one of the legion units away. It couldn't let the elephant through because it had units backing it. Letting the elephant through is probably usually a good move. The Greek cav did a little bit of a number on the remainder of those legionaries, and again, it's just whichever side is going gets to do a lot of damage. One cav unit is running away though, which is probably pretty heavy, and we got one dead. Got popped earlier in the turn. So speaking of that, let's get our points. That brings them up to 43, right? 42, let's add, right? And they've got 14, 20, 27 more. They're up to 67. So overall, this was a good turn for the Greeks. The reason, other than the fact that Pyrrhus is really, really good at rallying his forces, because really Dentinus, or whatever his name is, good old Buckteeth, isn't that bad at a 5. But the biggest factor is the Romans are close to their side of the map, so their men run away quicker. Not sure what that all means. In some cases, it may definitely mean you're being pushed further than you should be. In this case, I'm not sure that's really the case, but if you are being pushed beyond the camp, maybe that is an issue. I don't know. It's certainly, there's the possibility of rallying troops that are back in the deep areas if they're still in play, and I find myself doing that. I'm not sure it's a wise move in most cases because you're just throwing a leader out to do that. And if it's a good leader, well, he has a chance of succeeding, but he's out of play basically for at least some activation period. And if it's a lousy leader, he might not be doing the job, and he's out of play. Alright, on to the next turn. It's often so easy in this game to forget you can just keep pushing units. In the case here, we had the one remaining Roman cav, I believe, that's on the board. Came charging down, got a flank attack on one of those heavies, knocked it out with a rout. Got a continuation. Spent the extra cohesion hit and charged another heavy cav. Routed that, hitting it in the flank. Sometimes it's worth pushing your units a little harder to knock to take advantage of an important attack like this. This is giving a chance for the Roman infantry to reform back here. There's so many little things like this, little levers you can play with there, just in terms of, and I really like that, taking the additional friction. It's one thing that I want to point out again, because I'm not sure, probably anybody who's watching by this point is aware, but there are, as somebody mentioned, the game is a game of attrition. Well, yes and no. You're not really taking much away from your opponent with each attack. Almost the best effect you can have, unless you surround them, is to rout them. And if you rout them, if you're talking about a Pyrrhus or someone like that, they can probably get them back. So you've got this like limited number of things that fail to rally on any given roll. But for the most part, the forces can come back and present themselves not quite to the same effect, but pretty close. Anyway, let's get back to the game, I guess. Okay, so the Roman player just faced an elephant. And it went in and did some damage and ended up rampaging around. They sent somebody into its flank, and that was painful. And at this point, they're saying, you know, those two elephants there are probably going to cause us just as much trouble. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our next order to create an order of pork chop, the Flaming Pig table. And I'll use red for the one closer. Oh. No, I can only roll once. I don't think that's worth it. Alright, well, it seemed like a cool idea to try to target the elephants that way. But it doesn't do a lot to them. It's only really a 1 in 10 chance. Well, a 3 in 10 chance of any effect, one of which is an 8, is only one cohesion hit. Another one could be a significant amount, causing a rampage, and the final one could be a die roll attack. I'll wait until I have a crappier leader available. I used them already, but I really don't. I don't like where those elephants are, or I like where they are right now for throwing flaming pigs at them. Alright, just finished up the turn. Pyrrhus had a very hard time rallying forces at all. He actually sent quite a few to the graveyard. We'll look at that in a moment. Otherwise, things haven't really changed a lot. We see the Greeks have moved up, starting to challenge here now. Seeing the Legion coming forward, attacking those medium infantry. Got a flank attack on one, sent it flying. Cav ran off the board. The Romans no longer have any cav. Let's see what kind of points everybody spent here. 6, 11, 18, 24, 29 for Rome. Puts them at 96, and 10, 16, 22. The Greeks up to 64. This looks like it's actually been a good couple turns for the Greeks overall. Granted, they lost almost as much this time, but the Pyrrhus effect last turn was pretty big. And, you know, once you start engaging along the line like we're seeing across here, something both sides sort of give, and the Greek leadership is just better, at least in one leader, who's generally better at rallying forces. And then we have the off the edge of the map, which we lost a couple of units to that just didn't get a chance to rally. Alright, on to another one. I'm, for whatever reason you may hear it, I'm not terribly enjoying this. I don't think it's the game so much. Just, I don't feel like, maybe I'm just not in the mood or whatever. And I apologize for that. Not sure what I should be doing instead, but it was a hard sell to get this set up, and it's been hard to play through too, so I don't know. Well, that was a fast ending turn. Got the die roll of doom and followed up with a 9. All we've seen, a little bit of engagement down here on the side where one crappy Roman commander, I don't even know if he did anything. He just kind of rearranged some of the forces back there, brought some Triarii up. Hard to tell. The way Triarii are defined, there has to be a line. They can't advance if they're within 6 hexes of a line. I've always played that scattered troops don't count. But there really isn't a good line here. I think that'll work still, but so I've got some routers that I have to move off, but the Greeks pushed forward up here and punched kind of a hole in the Roman lines in a number of little places. And the turn ending fast means the Romans aren't going to be able to rally those forces. Now, on the other hand, also means the Greeks aren't going to be able to rally a couple of their routed units as well. And those will just go sliding deeper into the back areas. Nothing was lost this turn. No points generated. So it was just kind of, you know, because time's not really represented, it's hard to tell what really happens on a turn like this. I doubt that it's like, oh, that's the same length as these other turns. You could kind of state it as, well, you know, it was a little bit more intense fighting in a couple areas. Oddly, it's in the areas where the leaders are the worst, but okay. Alright, I guess we'll do another turn shortly. How tangled it all becomes the combat. The Romans came charging down, crashed into an elephant, put it into kind of questionable shape. Another elephant slips around the back, sends the Romans flying back. We've got some Greeks, hoplites that attacked. Both turned into a rout. But we've got the Greeks cracking the line here, and then the Romans pushing a phalanx back over here on this side. Here, the Romans have streamed down and have hit that medium infantry and just sent it flying back. It's really hard to judge what's going on here in terms of, is there a coherent, yeah, I can see one person's ahead, one person's not. Right now the battle feels totally in chaos to me. These heavy cav could come in and wreck that legion. Likewise, this disruption here, the Romans have to do something about. Their whole center is collapsing, but the Greek flank is collapsing as well. So, and this one's not in great shape either. So it's really, really a very dynamic situation right now. So it's no longer that the Roman center is collapsing, it's that the Greek right is just gone. The way they kind of cut a channel through the Roman army, well, now half of that channel has been shoved aside. So yes, they have some strength there, but they've got an exposed flank. This has been slammed through. We've got several routing units, a couple of popped units. Romans also took some losses, failed rallies, as it were. They were using a questionable leader to rally, mainly because they weren't going to get a chance to get anybody better in place for some of those units. And he did a pretty good job, actually, but he still ended up eliminating 2 decent legionary units, so that hurts. Alright, we still got more Romans to come. And the combat's gotten to the point where both armies are destroyed. The Greeks swept in here doing an all or nothing because they had lost so many units. They were trying to rally some of them and had things being popped over here. So they went with everything to try to destroy Roman units. At this point, both armies have enough points that they're at the route level. I'm not sure what happens. I don't know if it ends up a draw or if the person the furthest over loses. I've still got Pyrrhus's turn to go, and that should help a little bit. He might be able to kill off a few more units. So here's where we froze it, and the points ended up 139 for Rome, 107 for Epirus. Epirus is 12 points beyond. Rome is 4. By the rules, the Romans actually end up winning, but we're talking about a seriously Pyrrhic victory here. One thing I had mentioned, I think, in one of the earlier videos, was there was no advantage to taking the camps. That's actually a lie. I like to lie. The victory conditions have a number of, and I think I may have said this at some other point, But there are basically three victory conditions. What we saw, which was one army withdraws. The other is, on turn 10, if there are no Roman good order units outside the camp on the field. And then the final one that I forgot about mentioning was if 5 combat units are inside the Roman camp for the periods, and there are no Romans in the camp, the Romans lose. Now, clearly if you have to be outside the camp, I mean, it's not hard to stick somebody in there. I think the Triarii probably should have been just left in there for all they did and for all they're capable of doing. Their slower movement, lower ability in fighting. They're just heavy infantry hoplites essentially. It's probably safer just to at least keep a couple units in there to defend the camp. I didn't do that. There was no real threat. The only time there was pushing through here, but at some point before the end of the turn somebody could have thrown a Roman in there. Actually, there are Romans in there. There's these guys. You have to take all the towers out. Okay. Very, very chaotic battle, especially towards the end. And these things break down. You know, those nice lines that are somewhat defensible turn into these outflanking, running, charging, smashing into each other, very much like what the cav battles are, but all over the place. I'm going to play something other than SPQR. I'm not sure what. I don't know how much energy I have. But I definitely don't feel like doing another one of these right away. Something non-tactical. Maybe a Euro. I don't know. Alright, up you go.